a poem that Swami Kriyananda wrote, Ayodhya in June. Listen, fair June is humming in the air, and Ram's Ayodhya sings of lasting peace. The growing grass nods heavy to the wind, patient till cutting time. The hay is stored, the fields spring up with adolescent plants, with laughing flowers, berries, and graceful corn. In the orchards, every hand is quickly busy to catch the ripest fruits before they fall. The sound of honest labor crowds the noon. Men's hearts are strong with that perfected strength which smiles at fences, lays aside old hates, nurtures true love, and finds such earnest pleasure in seeking truth that every private mind seems drawn to virtue like a public saint. The women's words are soft with kindness. The children answer with humility. Even the men are like so many fawns, modest and still, sweet with complete respect. June in Ayodhya is so roused with joy, the earth can scarcely keep its boundaries. Swelling with energy and inner strength, till not a mountain, not a valley sleeps, straining to burst and flood the world with laughter. Such harmony flows everywhere when men, with grateful hearts, offer their works to God. Then brotherhood needs no enforcing laws, no parliaments, no treaties sealed in fear. True peace is theirs to whom the Lord is near. And so Swamiji describes how we want to live and what happens when many of us live in that way. He's describing spiritual community, he's describing Ayodhya, but he's describing our own consciousness as well, each one of us. I didn't grow up with the Ramayana, but when soon after I came onto the spiritual path, it was the first scripture that I read. I think part of my decision was also that, unlike the Mahabharata, it didn't have hundreds of long names that I had to memorize. But also the story was so clear and appealing, and the characters so noble and so lovable. You know, certainly they embody the qualities that everyone wants to live more of. And gradually I learned that also the story was really an inner story, that each of those characters reflects a quality within ourselves. The story unfolds within us. And with so many interpretations of what those symbols could mean. And in one sense, we could say, for example, that Ram is God, that Sita is the individual soul, that Ravana is the ego. And taking this premise, Sita gets separated from Ram and becomes imprisoned by Ravana, just like the individual soul can be imprisoned in the fortress of the human personality, which is ruled by ego. And that happens, Sita gets attracted to a beautiful deer. And likewise, the individual is bewitched by sense pleasures that are controlled by ego and that bring us to bondage eventually. Bondage, we can say, to the The 10 heads of Ravana can even symbolize the 10 senses in yogic tradition. But after Ravana kidnaps Sita, she realizes her error and she grieves. And at the same time, God, in the form of Ram, also grieves and goes out seeking that lost soul. And he first sends a divine messenger, the Guru, in the form of Hanuman, who sends a message of hope in the form of Ram's ring. And the individual soul surrenders itself in seeing that and makes a sacrifice. Sita offers a jewel she was wearing to be sent back to Ram. And God accepts that surrender and starts a rescue mission. And the soul is rescued and reunited with God. In another sense, Ram epitomizes, of course, the ideal husband, and Sita, the ideal wife. Swami Kriyananda says on that line, Ram displayed masculine nature, developed to perfection. He was high-minded, magnanimous, unhesitatingly truthful, strong in himself, committed at all times to what was right and true, ever ready to protect and defend the weak, forgiving of weakness in others, generous in victory, firmly committed to virtue, demanding of no one, fair-minded, reasonable, and wise. Sita was divine perfection manifested as femininity, loving, compassionate, utterly loyal, supportive, motherly, self-sacrificing, the counterpart of Ram in every virtue, but with softness and an all-inclusive understanding, rather than with outward strength. They served each other. They saw in each other not merely human, but as a manifestation of the divine. Sita was obedient to her husband, but not obedient to his personality, not to his opinions, but to his expression of the divine. When he tells her to remain at the palace and not follow him into exile, she lovingly but firmly says, no, that's wrong. My place is with you. Swamiji gives advice to husbands that if you want Sita to be your wife, you need to be like Ram. And of course, it works the other way as well for wives. And of course, Hanuman, the perfect disciple. And Hanuman can accomplish so much when he takes the name of Ram, even more than Ram could do. And so it is the disciple, when he serves as the channel for the Guru, can do so much more than he can alone. And God can do so many things through us, but we need to work with him. It's not that he does it for us, we have to do it, but we need to tune in to his strength and to his consciousness. And Swamiji said this in his own life again and again. He said many times when there was something that he could not do, he said inwardly to his Guru, you can do anything. And then suddenly he found the strength or the understanding or the wisdom to do whatever he needed to do. And so Hanuman was just a monkey, but look at everything that he could do when he took the name of his Guru, when he served as a channel for the Guru. There's the story of how Ram was aware that it was time for him to die. and that he said, Yama can come to me. But Yama was afraid to come because he was afraid of Hanuman, who was guarding the gates of the palace. And so in order for Yama to come, Hanuman needed to be distracted. And Ram dropped his ring, and the ring fell in a crack in the floor, and he asked Hanuman, could he fetch the ring? And that crack, of course, was not a crack, but it was a tunnel that led into Naglok, the land of the snakes. And the king of the snakes showed him this mountain of rings. And Hanuman was perplexed. How could this be? And he picked up the first ring, and it was Ram's ring. But then the second ring, it was also Ram's. And all of the rings were identical. And he said, how could this be? And the king replied and said that in this earth where we live, there are these cycles of time, cycles of life and death, and kalpas. And within each kalpa are 4 yugas. In the second yuga, Treta Yuga, Ram is born in Ayodhya. And then one day, Ram drops his ring, a monkey goes chasing the ring, comes down to Naglok, and this happens in every Treta Yuga. And so this has happened for all of these hundreds of thousands of cycles. And this mountain of rings is testimony to all of that. There's even space here for many of the rings of future Ramas. And Hanuman at last realized that this was Ram's way of telling him that he was going to die. Ram had to die, the earth had to die, but Ram is reborn every time the earth is reborn. And so cannot be limited, cannot be held down to any time, any period or place, but he's eternal, he's endless, he's always with us. Thank you.
Happy Ram Navami to everyone. I will also share a few thoughts. Wonderful story that Keshwaji told, isn't it? I didn't know that story actually. Yeah. And in fact, Ramayana is not something new to us. We probably grew up with the stories of it. Unlike Keshwaji, as you said, he's growing up now with those stories. But who did you hear these stories from? Like for me, it was mostly my grandmother. And then I realized that it seems like when you get the stature of a grandmother, all of a sudden this capacity to tell these stories is all of a sudden like bestowed upon you, isn't it? And children, when you watch, when you see this happening, like grandmother telling stories to the grandchildren, there's something's happening there, like the children are completely engrossed, and then they hear these stories over and over. No, it's not like, okay, tell me the story of Hanuman, and that's why even these days, the cartoons, the Chota Bheem and then the Hanuman, those are very, very popular, and I'm glad that they are popular as opposed to many of the others. These stories, as Keshwaji also hinted at, is not just like entertainment or inspirational stories, no, it's more like a Zen Kuan, those kind of, like, I don't know if you know of them, but it is more of them. Like, what does it mean is like they have layers and layers of truth. Of course, you can look at them, but there are many facets. And that's why probably we just keep listening to them and then keep understanding more from it. Like Keshwaji also hinted at like how we can look at them and then start looking inside rather than just saying it's something somewhere in Ayodhya, this story happened. And again, deifying all this, which we do, like worship Ram and Sita and Hanuman for that. But again, like imbibing what they probably have. If you remember the prayer that we started where Keshwaji asked us to invite his consciousness inside us. And that's what actually Swami and Master also invited. I was listening to a talk by Swamiji, and then this was a Kriya initiation talk, and he was telling about the Kriya initiation and how the Kriya work and how Master actually taught his students. And he says there were very little instructions that Master gave. It's not like, again, some of you probably don't know Kriya, but it will come. It just, let's say, some breathing technique. It's not like Master would put his disciples there and say, oh, your breath is a little shorter, it needs to be long. No, he didn't do any of that. Even if you ask questions, even Swamiji tried to ask question to Master, the answer to that wasn't like, oh, okay, come have a seat, I will explain that. No answer. Many a time he would ask disciples to draw that answer. You have to meditate on the question, and inevitably the answer came. In a simple way to look at it for ourselves is like, if there is a puzzle given to us, many times we get restless and say, tell me the answer. No, I can't stand it anymore. And an answer could be given, as opposed to you strive and you come up with that answer. No, there is a two fundamental difference. At the end of it, is the result same? No, it is not. It is something very different. When you solve the puzzle yourself, it's some way like we get that capacity, inevitable capacity to solve anything which at least falls in the similar complexity region. As opposed to if you're just told it is just information, some more you're trying to remember, and that can just go away anytime. So Master wanted us to learn this inside out. Why I'm saying this again is just the way Keshava is inviting is all these stories have a meaning to us inside out. My mother and me, we sometimes take a walk, and she's inclined to spirituality, and that's why we have a lot of talks. But she's not as sold to this concept as much as I can say like that. So she sort of just points at me. It's like, I used to be very, but look at all these saints and how great they are. Look at Ram. And she said, but he's Ram. You can't be Ram. And then we would argue on that part, and then something like that. But then later on I realized, see, whether I will or all of us will become Ram or not, it is something in future. Maybe when the time will come, and then we can analyze whether, where do I stand? Do I look like Ram? Quite. We don't know. But as Keshava is saying, does it have any relevance to me right now? And that is the question. Keshavaji prayed, with him we all prayed, invite the consciousness of Ram, not after 10 years, 20 years, now. All these energies, as we're talking about, the energy of Sita, energy of Hanuman, we want to possess it now. And in even more subtler terms, don't we possess it? As Master says, the path to spirituality is one of a realization. Everything that we're seeking is already inside us. It is more of a discovery. And so when we start to look for Ramayana, not only going into the Ayodhya, which is physically located somewhere, but going back inside and see, it has a profound effect. And like, oh, I see something. There's a school I go to sometimes, and then there, last week they had this plays by different children. The grade 3, they did this play on the Dashavatara, and we know that one of the Dashavatars is Ram. These are all avatars of Vishnu at different ages. He came and incarnated at different times, and then they enacted all of them. At the end of the play, one of the children, she came and she said like what we did, and she said ki, as Vishnu took these different avatars at different times of the age, we also become and express that energy when one of our loved ones or one of our families or one of our friends or something that we truly care of gets in trouble. And they were talking more in terms of family. And it is very sweet, isn't it? But the one I want to make sure that we notice that the tense that she used, she didn't say that we should become Vishnu. She wasn't preaching. She used present tense as if like this is a statement of truth. And if you reflect on your life, it is true for all of us. When we find something is sort of getting disturbed, some things we truly hold close to our heart, we don't need to say, oh, One day I will become Ram and I'll come to protect you. We step up. And we have stepped up. And that is that energy. You see, that is that energy which Providence always gives us when we want to push it out in that way. So this already exists inside us. It's for us to discover. What is the story of Ramayana? Again, Keshwaji hinted of the golden deer, Suvarnamrug. And that attraction, when we look at that story, is there something in me or something for me which is like that golden deer, which I have to go? It just pulls me out. I can't stop it. It's just too nice. I know all those theories which are there. I've read many of the spirituality, but still, we want to look at that pull, because what that pull does is forces Sita to send her beloved away from her. She has to ask Ram to leave because that is more important. It is just too tempting. And we know the rest of the story. What happens is, this is all a plot by the great Ravana. And when she falls for it, there is that inevitable separation. Inevitable separation. She will be in custody of Ravana till the heroic effort that Ram does one more time to go all the way and then free her from that Ravana. When I was much younger when this series of Ramayana came onto television. And it was very slow. In some ways it was good, but I think at that time the life itself was quite slow as opposed to these days. No? And I remember the time when the final war happened between Ram and Ravan. And then, they will just put one arrow after other. And then someone's arrow will disappear and they will get shocked. And this went on and on. For 2 episodes it went on. And finally one time Ram finally decides this is not happening, and he takes out that Brahmastra or whatever. And then he shoots at it. And then Ravan has clueless. He doesn't know what to do. And that's the end of it. So I was very like, why didn't he use that in the first episode? Isn't it? And then when I was reflecting on that, you see, like, it is what that Brahmastra made into Brahmastra. It is not that he could have just sent it on the first day when Ravana took it. But even the power that comes to Brahmastra is through that journey of endurance, persistence, as we just affirmed today, through the devotion, through the love that Sita had put it, to all the monkey Sena who were behind Ram, his brothers, Lakshman, the sacrifices that Bharat did, all that combined, and the firm determination, righteousness of Ram, all together when they come in one place, that is actually the Brahmastra. And then when that comes out, with all the failed attempts so far, Ravan doesn't stand a chance. And he knows that it is it. Sita becomes free one more time, isn't it? So again, we call that Ramarajya one of the very nice things, and we mostly talk about it in outward terms. We talk about like we need Ramarajya in our governments and all those things, but inside, who is the king of our consciousness? Can he be Ram? And what would that even mean, to have an inner kingdom as a Ramarajya? Will that mean it will be free from any problems? No, Ramarajya. Ram's life was full of problems, one after other. He never had anything. Will it mean it is free from evils? No, we have Ravan there. So what is it that is going to make our own inner consciousness Ramarajya? And that is the king of that would be Ram. That no matter what challenges, what situations will be offered to you, no matter how difficult, how demanding they would be, we will choose the wisdom of Ram. It will be the attitude, it will be right, it will be adherence to the truth, it will be adherence to the dharma. And that will make us live in that Ramarajya. Give us that strength to live a life which is in a righteous way, because in that lies the lasting fulfillment. Not just outward niceties, but living in that presence. presence of consciousness of Rama. Enjoy it.
Please stand, we'll have an